friends. This is Wheezy from the What is True Podcast. Hope everyone is doing rather exquisite. This is a small clip, and if you fancy listening to the entire episode, please visit the link tree below. This is due to the heavy censorship on this particular platform, so I hope you guys understand and hope to catch you on these other platforms. Much love. Friends, welcome to the What is Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Wheezy. I am joined by my man, Mr. Ryan Cristian of the Last American Vagabond. How are you, sir?
Good, brother. How are you? Good to see you again.
Doing good, man. Super excited to have you on. We've done, I think this is our fourth time. But it's been a while since the last time.
The world's changed entirely every couple of days, it seems.
Yeah, it does. The never-ending news cycle, man, for sure. And that's why I'm excited to have you on. I always enjoy your takes. You do the daily wrap, and you do long marathon shows covering the current events, from COVID to Epstein to everything in between, Gaza, and I always appreciate your insights.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So what are your thoughts on one of the... You've been covering a lot of Epstein. That's one of my wheelhouses as well. But it's been super interesting how MAGA, or the Trump administration, has been able to pivot completely away. I mean, they ran on the whole platform that they were against pedophilia and child trafficking, and now Maxwell is an ally. It's insane. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, unless as you know, off air, I had a migraine that was killing me all day yesterday, so I've been kind of out of the mix. And is there something major that happened over the last 24 hours that I missed? Because as far as I'm concerned, they haven't pivoted successfully at all. Like everyone everywhere is very aware of what they're clumsily trying to do. So is there any new update with Maxwell?
No.
Okay, because last I saw, they had given her limited immunity. I mean, you're not wrong, and just like the way you said that made me wonder if maybe there was some pardon, like but they limited immunity she's gained from the first 9 hour, 2 day kind of Todd Blanche, discussion. And that alone should have been way too far for anybody, especially people that were told these people were going to be taken down, not given pardons to, obviously that opened the door to her getting immunity from anything that she discussed, or rather that's what that's about. Like anything they gave her, she's immune from, not anything outside of that. So she could have laid out everything about everything she did, and she wouldn't be held accountable. And also they gave her like that box of material she brought in. The news went around that she had named 100 people, but then it came out that it was people that they had asked about. And I'm like, okay, that's very different, right? So they're like, what about this Democrat? What about that Democrat? It's like, that's clearly, it seems like a kind of aimed direction of what they're doing. And then ultimately it came down, as last I saw, where she was, claiming she wanted to speak, was appealing at the same time, but wouldn't speak until she was given immunity, and they said no. And I clearly, so does everybody else at this point, it seems, sense that there's some kind of an agreement, even beyond limited immunity. That could be enough, though, for Maxwell to come out and say, which is different than what she said before on record, that Trump never did anything wrong, at least in front of me. That's paraphrasing. Because before, she's on record saying that there were tapes of Trump and Clinton, and so it's like, It's pretty interesting. But so that, back to your point, they're sure as hell trying to pivot away. I know they're really trying to make it seem like, Trump's old, you're still talking about Epstein, was like the dumbest thing anyone's ever seen. Everyone knew that was stupid to say, and now they're acting like anyone's still talking about it. It's like, those are Democrats. I'm of the mind that most conservatives are very unhappy about this. Some of them still supporting him, some of them trying to put it behind them, but still are unhappy about it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's super, it's super interesting how it's just been playing out. And even with the whole Epstein stuff, like I said at the very beginning, this is something that actually inspired me to do my show back in 2019. I was just commentating as a live viewer on live chats and whatnot. And one of the things that drove me nuts way back, in like around 2017 or so, I noticed a lot of people in the quote unquote truth community were hesitant or afraid to tie Trump to Epstein. And so that's what inspired me to start my own damn show. I'm like, if no one's going to fucking do it, I'm going to take the reins,
that's all it does, man. That same, not same topic, but same thing for me. It's going like, what the fuck? Like neither, supposedly the left and the right, like captures all of it, which it doesn't. It's like they're over here saying one thing about this story. Here's the right media saying completely different things, and they're both claiming they're factual. And I'm like, okay, this whole thing's broken. And the point is, I'm like, okay, if no one's going to do it, I'm going to step in here and try to cover what I think's actually going on. That's kind of like like when I hear that says to me that you're doing this for the right reasons. You know what I mean? Like you're coming at this trying to break down the truth at all costs. And I appreciate that. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, especially with all about censorship. I mean, and being shadow bans, it's hard to even take off. But when I started doing it, I know I lost out on a shit ton of people that would have followed me if I would have been on the Trump train and pushing MAGA and all this shit. I lost a shit ton, but that's not what motivated me to do the show. My motivation was to get the damn truth out there,
right?
And
right.
so.
Well, I have a thought on why that is. I mean, I think what's interesting is, I mean, it's been evolving quite a bit, especially in the last 6-8 months, even like right before to now. And the point is, Trump's side of it, rather, I mean, it really has centered around Trump for the most part, but like the conservative kind of movement that's now different. I see it very different now. The team sport Republicans are the real problem, but that largely saw themselves as sort of like the truth community counterbalance to the Democrat, like that kind of idea, even though it's always been multifaceted. It's always been both sides of people that just see through the BS. But what's interesting is Trump was the seen kind of leader of that, right? And so they were very hesitant. I think most people it's less today, but still very prevalent, but much more guided as like, before this, that what would you call it? Not audience capture, but the leaders, the screaming team sport politics morons out there, I think, that have no interest in the truth, and both
the
sides,
influencers.
Yes, they were the ones that shouted people down from thinking about the obvious. The obvious many connections that are now swimming, all out everywhere. And the point is that they shied away. The ones that would have called it out. And so that momentum kind of carried, and Trump kind of became like the one that you weren't, that he's not the one, he's the one fighting the deep state. Like that became like this idea. And finally it blew up in their face, and there's been, Whitney and others have been saying, never shy away from this, obvious. There's a audio interview with Maria Farmer and Whitney, 2-part on TLAV, came out way back when, where she literally names Trump, like explicitly, as being a part of this. And, there's so many different examples like that are out there, but I guess it only matters when Tucker or Alex Jones come out and say these things. Otherwise it just gets kind of swept aside as not in the mainstream, because they are very much mainstream. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that drives me crazy is it's not until some of these bigger names, these media influencers start talking about it. Oh, now it's okay to talk about it. Now let's all get on the bandwagon. And that's the thing that drives me crazy with a lot of people in general. It's like one of my favorite things about you is question everything. That's your motto. That's your slogan. Question absolutely everything.
Right.
And the problem is a lot of people just love that groupthink. It's like they're scared to question outside the box. I mean, going back to this whole Epstein thing, I followed it in depth for many years now. And now with all the stuff that's coming out, all the quote unquote new information, I don't know how much of it is actually, how much of the Epstein story did I really know? How much of it is manufactured? I'm starting to question the entire narrative. I mean, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, I've had questions about her for a while. Just because, it almost seemed like a mission to clear Trump's name from all wrongdoing, even though the story goes that she was found at Mar-a-Lago by Epstein and Associates.
Well, you could always. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just little things like that I don't know what to believe about it. I mean, even with Maxwell allegedly in prison, and now she's going to Club Fed. And even the Epstein death, I know it sounds crazy to some people, but I don't even know if I believe that. It's just so bananas.
Well, that's not that crazy to say, man. I think most people have some suspicion. Clearly, I mean, it's a cartoon. The story that went down around Epstein. Like, let's not forget. And I don't want to. I'll go into it. There's like 3 other thoughts I had about what you just said there, but since that's that my mind went to, let's remember that this is like at the time. Around that, the guards asleep, the cameras didn't work, which clearly they were. We have a video now that they also edited, and we now know that. It's like it's not even a question. Like, they are lying to us. Now, why is the real question, right? That's what most people who are honest are at this point. And so it's not, Trump is lying, period. But maybe he's lying because his name's on these things because he knew him, but it didn't do anything wrong. And he knows that's going to hurt him either way. But that's still dishonest, right? I can wrap my mind around that. But the point is, I honestly don't think that's the case. I think it's obvious. Epstein's on record saying he was his closest friend for 10 years in the Daily Beast podcast. Now, he could be lying, sure. But it's at some point we got to look at the body of evidence. But to your point about the original moment, I mean, it's he did not kill himself. Now, I shouldn't say it like that. If he did, it's because somebody either told him, forced him to, and gave him the materials with which to do it. Right? That I wouldn't call that somebody doing that. That's clearly being coerced. And the reason I say that is because all of the evidence, every single thing, which I'm sure you know, from the room he was put in, from the person who was there with him first, who like strangled him, I guess, and they pulled him away and they moved him somewhere else. It's like had a cell phone. Like clearly there was something weird there. He's in a room designed to stop people from killing themselves, the maximum security, and then he's using sheets that allegedly are not even strong enough to be able to do that for a bunk not high enough to do it. Now
he's 6 foot tall.
Yeah, and now there's a bunk picture that we see now afterward that shows like this bottle precariously sitting on the edge. Are we fucking kidding me? Like it's just 100 different things. Not even getting to additionally add back in again all the different points that they lied about. So why'd they lie about the video? Why'd they lie about, it's just so obvious that something happened there, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's literally sitting in fucking Israel right now or somewhere else in the world.
That's where I'm getting at. That right there.
I would say that it's more likely, if I had to look at all of it, that he's probably dead, but not that he killed himself or that he was forced or he's killed. But my point is they could have just easily shuttled him away too. Not easily, but they could have.
Yeah. Did you ever hear about the Tony Rodham Clinton theory with Epstein?
The Tony Rodham, so like
Hillary's brother.
Okay, yeah,
passed away of unknown causes a couple of weeks prior to the Epstein death. And if you look at their pictures, they look pretty fucking similar, man. They look like doppelgangers. Same height, same age, so many similarities. And apparently, from all reports, Tony Rodham was the black sheep of the Clinton family.
What's the connective? Like, so what do you think so they both died?
I wonder I wonder if he died or they killed him, froze his body for a couple of weeks, and that's the body that got rolled out.
It certainly might be the case, but I mean, my thought is always what can we prove, right? Okay, so if that's possible, then what do we have to indicate that's the case, other than he looks like him and died similarly? It's one of those things for me. It's like, okay, that's interesting, right? Put a note, put a pin in it. And if we don't have anything else, it's just subjective, right? It could be. But that's how we today, especially, it behooves us all who are honest in this field to be very, very hard, very, very, like the joke, as always, irritatingly objective. It's the way we have to be today. That's kind of my running joke. Really, it's just being objective. But today, so many people are unable to do it, But it's what, to that point, though, that shouldn't be seen. See, the other side of that problem is people that go, oh, that's so dumb. That's not even possible. Of course it's fucking possible. Of course. People can do, they're capable of far more than we realize. But, it comes down to me, what's the objective, Because like, here's the thing for me. I don't think they would risk that kind of a thing. I think they just fucking kill him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's who these people are. He's become a liability. Nobody's bigger than the agenda, the machine. They would take him out, and that's where most people lean, is that that was him, and that he got killed in there because he was suddenly a problem, because he has a lot of knowledge. Now, Maxwell is the anomaly there though, right? So then if that's the case, then why is Maxwell still alive? Maybe because she doesn't have the same insight. It's all a bunch of unknowns. And that's why we have to always be objective and not jump to conclusions, but that is interesting.
Well, there's a lot of curious things. I mean, one thing that a lot of people will often bring up about Epstein is, well, the walls had closed in. And of course, that was his only way out, or he was going to sing, blah, blah, blah. But people quickly forget that he was involved in a $500 million Ponzi scheme in the 80s, got a slap on the wrist. In what was it? No
sweetheart deal.
Yeah, no 6. He got the sweetheart deal. So if you're Epstein, you're like, oh yeah, I'll get out of this mess. I've gotten out of 2 other prior times. So that's what makes me wonder. And he never really snitched on anyone. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if you're to believe that there's such a thing as a kill switch, I mean, that's another thing you got to worry about. So
you mean like releasing data and stuff after he died?
After you're dead.
That comes up. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and people, it seems weird to me that, after they raided Epstein Island, Little St. James, we saw video footages of
Mm.
all kinds of FBI agents pulling out the Pam Bondi truckloads of Epstein files from there, and we never heard a goddamn
And
thing
and,
about it.
and
And now
remember,
we're being told it's all a hoax, a Democratic hoax.
so
It's all
stupid.
bullshit, man. The whole thing, top to bottom. This is what I mean. I don't know. So when I say things, I'm not saying it that I know for a fact.
Right.
I just don't fucking know anything anymore.
Well, that speaks for itself, right? Shouldn't we know? Like, shouldn't as the American people have given some kind of not just some clearly false narrative, but that's how this country works, right? What about, look at the JFK Warren report, look at the 9/11 report. Nobody, even during the JFK set, I think it was like 70-something% of Americans didn't believe the Warren report. Look it up. Like, people, like, you guys are fucking lying to us. That's what your job is. And like, I almost feel like we had a moment where we kind of fell back into kind of losing ourselves to the partisanship more than ever. But I think that's now, so it's coming back out. But the point is that we don't have answers is a huge, obvious issue. You know what I mean? Like, because they understand, they're not going, well, we don't know. Case left open. They're going fucking done, shut the case, it's over. And we still don't have any real answers, rather any answers that obviously align with the facts, And so it's just like, it just doesn't make any sense. But the kill switch point, that always comes up. It's not unrealistic. Like, Assange kind of point. I very much believe that this is something that I think it's clear that it did exist, whatever that means, whatever it could have ended up being if he would have died. The point, though, is that I don't think Epstein ever alluded to having a kill switch or, a data burst that would come out after he somehow died and how that would work. So I think that tends to be kind of thrown out there as a what if. But again, if we don't have any evidence to back it up, I just feel like it becomes noise in the conversation, to focus on what we can absolutely prove. And it's like, is it possible he killed himself because everything we're talking about, like he was upset and he didn't want to go to jail? Yes, of course it's possible. And that we have to acknowledge that. But you're right about the bigger point there that often doesn't come up. I mean, in his mind, he's gotten away from, he was, serious crimes. He got away with murder.
Crimes.
Many times, to the point at the highest levels of power. When it's a public story, most people would be like, okay, maybe they came in and said, we're not doing it this time. You always consider that. But the reality is killing him or moving him somewhere else makes sense with everything we know. Outside of that, it just, again, back to the main point, again, all of the facts they gave us to claim he killed himself are all flimsy and don't add up. So that's a fact, right? Now, why is what we have to consider. Most people jump to the idea that that's because he didn't kill himself. That makes the most sense to me, just important to be objective. The same thing we did with like Butler and stuff, where it's like, it's so easy to connect these dots, but you're not there yet. It's like they're right there, but it's like, you just got to wait for the facts. But the whole way it's spitting out the entire conversation, I think speaks volumes. 100%. With the Trump administration, the way that they're acting around this, the way that Trump keeps kind of flipping back and forth between hoax and now it's real, but it's the Clintons. Well, but wait, it was a complete hoax for the Democrats, but Bill Clinton's on there. It's like, people aren't this stupid. They're just not this stupid.
It's just funny when I studied that character because we always heard reports about Trump always watching the news, like nonstop TV, can't get enough of it. Then when asked about Maxwell or Epstein, I haven't really followed it. I don't know.
He's lying. There's no fucking way he doesn't have any insight. Like, look, I'm sorry to jump in. If he knows that he's a centerpiece in the story, and that's what bugs him, right? And even if it's true, it just kills him that he can't just deflect away from it. And so the fact that he's like, I don't know, one is insanely impossible because he wants to know where the case is going for his own interest. But secondarily, he's the fucking president. He's not going to be involved in a conversation about a possible pardon, especially being Trump. I don't know for a fact, but I would bet my life that that's not true. And he's also done that in like 6 other conversations in the past couple of weeks, right? Where he kind of deflects and goes, I don't know, I've read it just as much as you have. And I'm like, so you're willing to make yourself look that inept and that stupid as the president who doesn't even know about foreign policy situations in order to act like you're not involved? That shows me weakness. That shows me that he wants these people to take the brunt of the issue if these things go wrong, because everything's going wrong. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One thing I wanted to ask you was your thoughts on how far this corruption goes, because I've been going down the Lincoln assassination rabbit hole for a couple years now. I've read shit tons of books on it. I feel like a goddamn scholar, and by me calling myself a scholar on it, I don't take it. I don't half-ass shit. That means I've done my homework. I've done my research.
That's what you need to do.
And the thing is, when you brought up JFK, and I often hear people say that America changed after JFK, blah, blah, blah. Now that I've gone down Lincoln, I'm like, hell no. That shit, none of the Lincoln assassination, I believe, it's almost the same like the Epstein shit. All the stories quickly fall apart. The official narrative is complete and utter horseshit. And as much as I've researched it, I still don't know what happened, during the Lincoln assassination. And when you look back at that time period, for example, 1865, Lincoln has been mythologized in the present day as a crusader against slaves, and
not really true.
And it was all bullshit. He was
I wouldn't say massive bullshit, but it's not really accurate.
Well, he was a massive tyrant, and people forget that he suspended habeas corpus, which in 2025 that's being talked about today.
But he did. But it's important to note that he did get it ratified by Congress after the fact and acknowledge that it was wrong. So that's quite a bit different than we're dealing with today. But I would agree it was still a massive issue. And, but that's an important note to make, because even today, we're not even coming close to something like that, and they're flirting with that idea.
Yeah. And I guess the point, just studying that era and how, we're talking about 160 years ago, and how corrupt everything was. No knock warrants, illegal searches and seizures were going on, and people were not cool with it. Even back then, they were pissed off that it was happening. Lincoln was hugely unpopular, even with his own, within his own base at that time period when he was alive. And so my mind goes back, oh shit, so things were bad even 160 years ago, and the government was corrupt as hell 160 years ago.
See,
that didn't happen overnight. This probably goes back even to the dawn of when America was initiated. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at.
It goes back to the beginning of government, if you want to get real about it. You know what I mean?
That's what I wanted to ask you. How far back do you go for all this corruption that ties into today's world?
Well, it's the way what I mean by that is government's the problem. It's look, there has been examples of positive things. I'm not going to be, one, like there are people, and I think you can easily show that this has been a corrupted system very early on. I can't, the further back you go, the harder it is to be, accurate about it. But my mindset is that in that room with the founding fathers, the idea is that there was a battle right then about more of a federalized, all-encompassing government versus more of the states' rights, lacking federal government. The Federalist Papers, there's a whole conversation that was going back and forth about this. And arguably, what we're taught is that they won out the constitutional republic, and that we're going to do this as, states being this, the idea is that the ultimate objective of any higher government would be simply to enforce the Constitution, possible military dynamics. But that, at the time, it was all about militias. The point is, I think very quickly, and I'm not like an expert on history of I know a lot about, probably more than most, but I'm not like some scholar on it. But the point being is that very early on, and I've actually had really good conversations about this with Bruce Fine, who is a constitutional expert. He worked for the Reagan administration. We do a show called Fine Points on Monday. That ultimately very early we lost to that, like in the sense is that idea won out, and we can see that today, right? We are right now what we have contradicts what we were, the very idea of what this country was founded on, a centralized federal government, a standing army, all the things that we were arguing not to have. So my point is that he argues like Jackson was a turning point. Everyone can decide for themselves, but I think we clearly see that shift. And so my point is that is government. Always. There are people throughout this, even after these shifts, where people tried to step back in and do what they thought was better for the country in some cases. But my point is that this thing corrupts government, and what it is, I don't think is necessary. I'm very much an anarchist in that mindset. And people don't know that. It means anarchy is not it's not synonymous with chaos. That's one of the most obvious deliberate manipulations of a word I've ever seen, because anarchism is the only ideology that does not have a place for these kind of rulers. There's no government involved. Now it means no rulers, not no rules. People misunderstand that, but that's a whole other conversation. My views are all over the place. My point though is that I do think we can drive toward a world where government's not necessary. We just need to start changing the way we see the world, and stop pretending like the boogeyman will jump out of every shadow if there's not some military man with a gun over your head. It's just so manipulative. So back to the point you're making, Clinton or Lincoln, there's plenty of things that I could point to that I think were, I mean, again, you could argue had good intention. Hard to say. But your point about that, I agree. I think the slavery point, his own quotes show that it was like, he cared about it, he was fighting for it, but at the same time, he'd be willing to give it up should he have gotten what he wanted out of, I'm paraphrasing. That was one of those famous quotes, that he could take it or leave it if he got, the direction he was going for. And so, the large point about it all, I argue, was about states' rights. I think that was a major point we're talking about, where it became more about, slavery is the way they framed it looking back, but slavery was only one issue of where the states got to decide about whether they made these laws and not the federalized overarching hand, right? And so that was one of those shifting moments where the federal government rule won out, and day by day and government by government, administration by administration, we found ourselves here where we are, we love to lie about the world we live in right now, but we do not live in the world we think we do. We live in an authoritarian, it's a dictatorial government. I mean, guys, we've kind of shuffled it into executive order, but how is it any different? You've got one person dictating what happens, even though arguably the executive orders only applied to, not arguably, only applied to executive branch. They write executive orders for things around the world, so that's where we live today. So it's a large sprawling thing. It's hard to say where it exactly started, but it's clear that's what it was about in large point. But I wish we could have that larger conversation about how we could still exist without some kind of government telling you how to do everything. James Corbett and I have had really good conversations about that over the years.
Yeah. I had Corbett on a few months back. I love his work. Love your work as well. But yeah, I have changed my way of thinking into that whole anarchism, mindset. Now, the way I look at it is it realistic? I don't think it's realistic. I think we're too far gone for it. Ideally, that's what I would want.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just don't want to interrupt you. If you have a thought, go ahead and flesh it out. But I'm going to comment on that.
Go ahead, man.
So I think with whatever we do, it's the same idea that the logic right there. And I don't, that's fair to have an opinion about how I don't disagree that it's a really difficult uphill battle to get to that point. But it's like anything else, right? That's the same. That's the not the principle, but it'd be the same as saying, I don't think we can get back to a place where we have constitutional rights. It's just too far gone. It's just people are too missed. The point is, if we believe in these things and we believe that this is a better world, then regardless of how difficult it may seem, we should fight for it. That's the premise for everything that I do, And so it's difficult, sure. And I don't even disagree. I make the same point that we're at a time right now where it may very well be impossible. I'm just never going to accept that because of where we've been driven to, that so many people are so just like, they can't even envision a world without having some kind of a nanny state, without some kind of, paternalism running everything, where they decide based on what they think is best for everybody. They're not even hiding that anymore. That's not how this is supposed to work. And so if we can discuss a, slower, like that's where like people like Massey and others would come in, whether that's their intention or not, most of their policies lean in that direction where we have less overarching influence, less powerful government, less, and if we can just start going back in that direction, you can find places that can exist without having that centralized government control. And from there, it starts to become more clear why these things can exist without any of it. Because when you realize government is just a power structure, that who's doing everything? It's the same people. You and I and everyone, the construction workers, the people building roads. That's the joke Corbett always makes. Like, who's going to build the roads? It's the same people doing it now. Yeah, and maybe they'd be private companies. And there's another point that always comes up. Of course, then you're going to have these private corporations that try to take over everything. Yeah, there's always going to be something. The point is that's if liberty and freedom of choice is truly what's driving everything, then people can be left to these self-determination. And that you will have. Like, let's hypothetically, I'm diving into this now because it's so interesting to me, but let's say you've got a little society that is deciding to do their own thing. There's no overarching government. The point is, well, someone's just going to come in and destroy them and steal everything. It's like, well, yeah, historically, government does that all the time, by the way. Something that Larkin Rose points out or others is you have private security. All right. So you still have a structure. You can have whatever they decide, some kind of parliament thing, some kind of republic, whatever. People shifting and people are deciding for the community or not. The point is that you can hire people that come in for security. And maybe then suddenly you have a security company that can come around. And, there's all these ways it can go and everything can slant in the wrong direction. Then they can become too powerful. The point is, if you're always checking these things, which arguably was one of the good things about the way the Constitution was built, if you're forced to live in a state of society, is that they did create check and balance where you ultimately have the powerful entities having to compete with each other to get things done. And so in argument, if we stayed locked into this, if Americans truly were involved in every way and we didn't allow them to change everything and take the power they have, then, we could arguably maintain that check on power and keep them to that position. Didn't work because we got complacent, apathetic by design, though, because the government recognized the less we were involved, the more they could take power. It's like this never ending cycle. But to end this rant, my point is that I definitely think that it is possible and we can begin something like that. But, a classic quote, I forget who said it first, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We just got to start.
I hear you. I guess my mind goes back to when I think about how corrupt government is. One of the biggest issues is there's always a power vacuum. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, I don't understand why, it's always these psychopaths that gravitate to the top, man. These are the motherfuckers that will do some stone cold-blooded shit and not care, not blink, not give a fuck. Look what's going on in Gaza, where a genocide is happening. No one seems to give a shit, man. There's even laws in the UK now where I saw this Twitter post where the Metropolitan Police in the UK was bragging about arresting people because they were pro-Palestine shit. I mean, it's so fucking gross, man. And this is why I lose hope, man. It's always these psychopaths that don't think like you and I, don't have any compassion for our fellow human being. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I come.
Isn't it funny that in the UK, 30 seconds ago, you had Elon Musk and all of Twitter freaking out about censorship in the UK. Funny how they don't care now.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's okay. It's okay to censor around Palestine, right? It just shows you the garbage that goes on in this field. That wasn't real, guys. Those people didn't care about censorship. They cared about specific political talking points. That's the fake dynamic of the mainstream alternative media. And, that's the problem right now is that I still think the majority of people, obviously, they're human beings. They have feelings and, and they care that children are starving to death, regardless of the political intention. It's very clear that the world sees that. So I agree that the power structures, they couldn't care less. Rather, who knows whether they care or not? They're either bound, blackmailed, forced, controlled, or just, Zionists themselves. They just don't seem to want, they don't care that we all see them doing this, which is just wild to me. And it shows you what's really going on. Either they're not in control or they've never been what we thought they were. Probably both, but the people, that's different. I think the majority of people today are very much starting to awaken to something really dark. Too many of them choose to put it away. I get it. It's hard. It's scary. Like, who wants to acknowledge that the world is, just much worse? I mean, not the world, but that the society, the system that we live in is much darker than we wanted ourselves to believe, but I think we're more than I've ever seen. Let's put it that way. I think people are seeing it, whatever that means. And it's one of these moments, man. We have a moment right now that we can take advantage of. And often it falls back into, going back to sleep, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when I see comments, I mean, this is anecdotal. It's not scientific or anything by like that or anything of that matter. But for example, when the White House tweets, I have a theory that Barron Trump is running the White House Twitter feed with how ridiculous shit is.
I would agree with that.
But in the past, whatever the White House, would post out, people were like, #based, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. Ever since the Epstein fumbling by the Trump administration, man, I just go through the comments and with my popcorn, I'm reading them. Everyone's talking shit like, that's great, but what about the Epstein files? Yeah. That's great, but why are we protecting pedophiles? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, God damn, that gives me some hope, that people are waking up.
Yeah, that's my point. And same with some of these manipulators out there that, I'm to come to your own conclusions about what you think people are, but like a Jones, which it's, this is what's so crazy to me is that I'm not saying everything, I know everything about what they think and feel, but I can prove with certain points. Like, this is not like, I think he lies right here. Like, that should be enough for me. I'm like, how does that not show people? But people still watch, here he is again, lying to you. My point is that you look at their comments the same way. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I mean, I've never in my life, but we see it on a larger scale. We see Tucker calling out Laura Loomer. We see Tucker's feuding with, who was it? All these different kind of weird moments where people are like, all of a sudden, like right down the middle of the conservative base or the conservative, both the base, but also the conservative, talking heads. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know. That's the point. And everyone can see that. right? It's not hard to recognize that shows you they're disagreeing at a very high level. So that gives you the very clear impression that there's something wrong, That's why it's funny when they come out and go, it's only a small group of people. So is Tucker Carlson in this crowd of small people? This is funny that they know everyone sees it, and that just shows you that they're losing. No, they've lost control of the narrative. I think it started with COVID-19, at least the visible way in which they lost control of the narrative. I think even things like East Palestine added to that. People just were like, wait a minute, we know you lied about this. Okay, there's something going on here, left and right. And Israel just, I think, threw it over the edge. And I think Israel, whether they thought that they could do this because of that or what their logic was, or they just didn't care, Zionism blew up in their face. Like what they did there, they shot themselves in both feet by thinking they could just go full genocide and nobody would see. Now you can't put that away. They've lost it, And so this whole thing, that's what I think they're most frustrated by. When you watch the way Trump responds, he used to be able to go like, don't talk about that, and everybody would follow suit. Now, doesn't happen. And so that's probably very frustrating for him, but they've lost control. And I don't know how they put that genie back in the bottle. I think they have to do something new, like a new false flag, for example, to scare people back into place.
Yeah, I've been thinking that for a while now, unfortunately, that there may be a false flag involving illegal immigrants. You see a lot of the Trump influencers pushing, to deflect from the Epstein stuff. They just, oh, look, illegal immigration arrests are up. Oh, look at all these deportations happening. It's like they're constantly bombarding their feeds, it's like red meat for their base. And
but it's not even true.
It's not true at all, but their base loves it. They don't care.
Yeah.
It tickles their ear holes and it makes them feel good, even if it's not true. It's just bullshit. But I've been thinking that there could be something on the horizon involving illegal immigrants, and that way you can look strong against illegal immigration and bring on the surveillance state. You're killing one bird with two stones at
right.
that point. And when I look at, I mentioned this last night when I had a 7 on, but when I was younger, when I was a normie, I used to listen to these pundits on TV, whether it was Dateline, NBC, 60 Minutes, Dan Rather, and all these clowns. And as a normie, I would listen and take their word as wisdom, and I trusted them. If they told me this is how the world was,
right,
I believed that shit. And now that I question everything, like your shirt says, when I listen to these guys, it's like these guys are fucking lying. I watch Dan Bongino. Every time he talks, I'm looking at his body language. He's blinking awkwardly. His movement, he can't even contain himself. He's lying so fucking bad. Same thing with Kash Patel.
They're terrible.
I don't know if you caught that Rogan podcast he was on, where he said on the Rogan podcast that the day before he came on Rogan's, he got swatted. The head of the fucking FBI with a straight face says he got swatted. And no one really questioned him about that. I know Joe Rogan kind of pushed back. He's like, wait a minute, the head of the FBI got swatted?
I didn't hear about that. That's crazy.
It was massive, man. I'm like, how the fuck was that? Should have blown up. That I clipped it out. I put it on my Twitter.
That's silly.
And you look at his face, Kash Patel's blinking and looking away, can't even make eye contact. And so with all these guys, if you're looking for those telltale signs of a liar, you see it constantly with these clowns.
Right.
And so what are your thoughts on that, man? It's like, to me, it seems so obvious now, but I guess when I was a normie, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker, and I don't understand it anymore.
Well, here's what's interesting. A thought that you just gave me, which I don't think I don't think I've had this thought before necessarily, but what's interesting to me, before that switch, right? The reason that I think, going back to the time frame you mentioned there, kind of a specific rather, and that most people had the impression that the news, you go ask your grandparents. If it's in the paper, it's fucking real. Like maybe not today, but that's what they thought back then. Like there's just no way around it, And then my point right there is that at that point, it wasn't left versus right. Not really. Not in the media, right? The media was just objective, truth-based. Like that's how they framed it, right? Even like up until not that long ago, they still pretended like Fox and CNN weren't partisan. Do you remember that? They tried to pretend like they were fair and balanced. And now they fucking pulled that mask off. They're right, left, like it's on the face. And so that shows me something, right? So my point is that when it wasn't divide, That shows me that the country, rather the government, had a very clear, coordinated message, right? And that they wanted you to see and feel and think, but that they didn't want you fighting each other, even though they did have left and right. Now, what's different to me, this is what I've always talked about, is that it's just one government, guys. They work together in unison for their agendas. Now, at some point, okay, I thought I lost you. At some point, that switches, right? Where that switches away into this very hard, like 2016 forward, it was very clear. You went from being the other side to being the enemy, right? The terrorists, they're going to bring the country down. Now, what I'm getting at, I feel like that defines a very clear shift in what was happening. Now, how, the question I'm asking people out there, does that benefit the government? How does it benefit them to divide us along party political lines? Wouldn't it benefit the government much more if we were all on the same page? So what that tells me is either that they want to just divide us to do something for very, like the technocratic shift, that would make sense to me, right? Because that's a whole other form of government. That's not what we think is happening, or it's something outside this country who is dividing us to conquer us. I really think that. Now, obviously, I already think that. I've been talking about this for a long time, but that's an interesting thought you just gave me, because that is a very clear inflection point where things shifted into our decline, right? Like our constant fight back and forth, our childish nature, not getting anything done. And here we are. So I'm going to talk about that more. Thank you for kind of stirring that thought. That's interesting.
I'm glad I could.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Didn't you ask me a question?
That's awesome. What's that?
I'm sorry. Didn't you ask me a question? Now I'm thinking I didn't even answer your question.
No, I was just making a comment. But this is the clip where Kash Patel claims he got swatted.
This is insane.
Listen to this. Yeah.
This is how hard. This is what I'm trying to show. It's not a Republican or Democratic thing, right? It's an all-hands-on approach to protect the leadership that was so corrupt, to protect themselves and their actions and their friends. My mission is to educate the world that this happened. And as director of the FBI, I have a responsibility. I'm not just going to bring a case because somebody hurt me. They did.
Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't.
Well,
wasn't.
Well, while you find the other one, what's interesting about that is, I just lost it. What did he say? So what's funny is not Democrat or Republican. How much you want to bet that the people he just pointed to and their friends who are doing the corrupt things are all Democrats? You know what I mean? Like that's clearly what he's alluding to. Comey and Clinton, and it's not about left and right, but it's all the Democrats that we're pointing out. Go ahead. I just think that's what he meant.
It was the clip, so I cut it off too short. So here, let's continue on.
My mission is to educate the world that this happened. And as director of the FBI, I have a responsibility. I'm not just going to bring a case because somebody hurt me. They did, and they continue to do it. Shit, my house just got swatted yesterday.
What?
Yeah, but
you got swatted?
But move along.
The eye gets swatted?
Yeah.
I'd love for it. So did they flesh that out at all, or does it just go forward?
He just brought it up. Rogan obviously asked him twice, like, wait a minute, the head of the FBI? And then he just like, oh, yeah.
Did they flesh it out more, or did they just go to
he just went over to the next subject. I'm like, this is big fucking news, dude. The head of the FBI getting spotted. Yeah.
But what you're getting at, though, is how is that even logically possible? That's why he's pushing back. So you're telling me, because typically, not always, but typically that means the FBI. That's what a SWAT team, that's what that would mean. But it could be a local, police guy, but still. So you're telling me they don't know that he's the FBI director? Like, that's wildly implausible,
Yeah.
But unless he's trying to allude to the fact that there's secret Democrats still in the government who made that happen, which is funny because that's like this ongoing, undefined thing they need you to think. Because it's always easy to go, oh, it was this holdover Democrat. Remember in the beginning, they said that like 16 different times about 15 different topics. Guess what never happened? Not one of them ever got handcuffed and arrested. Ask yourself how that makes sense. Probably because they don't exist. You know what I mean? Like, so you're treason, infiltrated, but then nothing,
remember
security. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's the same thing. Remember when Trump was running, he's like, he was going to jail crooked Hillary and lock her up was the slogan and all this shit. And then later on, his own base, like, hey, aren't we going to lock up Hillary? And he's like, oh, that was just the election talk, running. Basically locker room talk or banter. He completely just brushed it away. No one, it's fucking bananas, man. How they can just say these outlandish claims and then just act like they never even said it or it wasn't a big deal.
Well, beyond that, he also said in a different conversation, they're good people. That's what he said about the Clintons, right? After all of this. And then later, this was like not long ago. This was pretty recently, where he said that he had the chance to go after him and he decided to let them go. That's what he said. And they're something about being thankful, something very clearly, and so it's like, he really is, whether he's not aware of how bad that makes him look, it doesn't matter. Like I think it's because he is not going to go after him, and he knows he's not going to go after him. And so he has to set that table in hopes that then the team sports screaming Republicans just follow suit and go, it's okay. It was never supposed to happen in the first place, to marching orders. Everyone else is supposed to ignore this now. Move along. It's not happening though. That's why I think the whole subpoenas are on Epstein. It's all big nothing burger, in my opinion. I hope not. I think they all should go to jail, left and right. But I think that's about, if they ever even come before Congress, which I don't think it's going to happen, but you march them out, ask them a bunch of questions, nothing happens. But it sure causes a lot of stir and a lot of clips and Twitter, the different, when they're sitting there in front of Congress, all these clips come out about the things and the grandstanding and all the moments. Nothing happens though. I often point to Clinton, rather specifically the Clinton Foundation, being called out by a couple of guys from Boston, these investigators who laid out, not opinion, like slam dunk evidence of pay to play, which is easy to show, by the way. Nothing happened. It was, and that was a while ago. And so it's the same thing. He already told you, go after her. Now, never mind. It's whether it's because they're got the goods on everybody and there's a kill switch, or, whatever you want to talk about, something, or it's just that they're all on the same team, which is kind of where I lean.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And even going back to the Lincoln days, there was a lot of that going on, and that's what I don't think too many people want to go there. I did want to ask you, you've done a lot of coverage on the whole COVID narrative.